Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is Byron Lazine, and today here in Las Vegas, Nikki Beauchamp is joining me on the podcast. I nailed it?
You totally nailed it.
Oh my gosh, yes. So Nikki, this is super cool for me because I have absolutely been following you, at least on Twitter, probably a bunch of social platforms. I feel like forever. I know you were at Swanepoel. So we've been like
yes.
at the same places.
At the same time.
Absolutely.
And, you're in Connecticut. I'm in New York. We
right
really
there.
aren't that far apart.
No.
But this is the first time that we've actually spoken to each other face to face.
I agree. You have
which
these,
is like remarkable when
I
you
agree.
think about it.
You have these social connections. You're like, man, I just know that person. I know that person, but I've never sat down. We certainly haven't done a podcast. So this podcast to me is just like really awesome. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm like, yes, finally.
So before we get into all the stuff I want to ask you about, why don't you just let everybody know who you are, your background story, how you got into real estate, that whole however long you want to take your origin story, if you will.
So I came to real estate from a technology and financial services background, sort of more of a consulting arm. And how I got into real estate, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Manhattan, despite my lack of New York accent, or so I am told. Apparently, all New Yorkers are supposed to sound like the TV shows and movies.
Every
and
native New Yorker wants to make sure that I am a native New Yorker.
Yeah, to the point that my personal cell phone number is a 212 number.
Oh.
So I'm old school, New York. So anytime people move to New York, my friends would say, or coworkers, you need to talk to Nikki. She was born here. She grew up here. She went to school here. I even went to college. I didn't go away for college. She will tell you where to live, what to do, where to eat. So I would send business to a friend of mine, and she would say, you need to get your real estate license. And I would say, I have no time to do that nonsense. I just don't have the time. And she showed up at a holiday party one year and said, your referrals this year paid for my car. Can you get your license so I can do something other than give you like a gift card? Because, license law is important. You can't pay referrals to unlicensed people in the United States. So I got my license, and after a couple of years, and I was maybe a little burnt out from my actual job, and I thought maybe I can try this and give it a chance. And almost 17 plus years later, here I am.
And it was like a salary job, so not.
It was a salaried job. So I've been in the traditional corporate job, salary, benefits, all that 9 yards. I have been involved in helping to start companies and selling them off, being acquired, all of that stuff. Did a little bit of private equity, all sorts of interesting, quirky things. I remember the first .com boom and bust, which means I have a lot of stock options that are basically just worthless paper.
Hey, but you have the option.
But I have the options for things that no longer exist, which, incidentally, some of them, if they had been launched in the next boom, would have worked.
No
so
question
it's really
about that.
fascinating.
So in sales, just sales right now, or other parts of the industry as well?
Just sales. I spend a lot of my waking and sometimes not awake time. Sometimes I do have dreams or occasionally nightmares about the volunteer work that I do in the industry.
Before we get into that, because you do a ton of volunteer work, Inman ambassador, like all this kind of stuff. But before we get into that, I want to stick here on the real estate sales side just a little bit before we dive into that. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts right now, current state New York City market, where it's at right now and where you think it's going here in the short term.
I think that the market in New York City has opportunity for buyers. Very specifically, most of the activity that I'm seeing in my sales practice is ranging in that sort of $500,000 to 1.5 buyer. There's inventory, there's possibility of striking deals, and sometimes there's this weird thing where the sellers are actually willing to negotiate, but they're not adjusting the prices. So you see things sitting, But when you actually go,
they feel like, well, I'm not, if I lower my price,
I'm going to sort of undercut myself. But then the buyers don't want to go because it looks like it's stale. And it's like this really weird stalemate. But thank God for relationships. And when you can call a broker and say, okay, so what's going on? How are things going? And then below the $500,000 range, which sounds, in the rest of the country, price points are very, very different. But in New York, there are still opportunities for people who want to be sort of first-time home buyers. People are going further out into the boroughs. They're going further out into Brooklyn. They're going further out into Queens. I have actually sold a couple of things to buyers up in the Bronx who are first-time buyers. And that's actually a really gratifying part of my practice, because these are often, they're artists, they're native New Yorkers, they feel priced out, but they're still able to buy a little piece of New York. And then on the very high end, there's too much of the new development inventory out there. And again, that also suffers from that same sort of conversation where there are the developers that are being really open about the incentives. They are willing to pay transfer taxes. They're willing to pay, years of common charges. And then there are the developers who aren't actively putting that conversation out there, but the conversations can be had in negotiation. Deals can be made.
We saw last time the market kind of reset that New York came back really, really strong, right? And to your point right now, there's a lot of New York brokers and so on that are, oh man, it's harder than it's been, say, 3 years ago, right? Because of some of the challenges that you just outlined.
It's definitely harder. It feels like every transaction just takes that much longer to get to, either A, getting the offer in the first place, or getting agreed upon terms and price. And then the contracts, that's often where things fall apart a lot. And it's odd at times, because sometimes it's not necessarily about the price and the terms. It can be that something bizarre comes up in the due diligence and there's litigation that wasn't quite, detailed early enough. And there's so many ways for a deal to go off the rails before you get to the contract being signed. And then in New York, we have so much of our housing stock that is co-ops versus condos. So co-ops, when you're buying shares, you're buying an apartment, but each apartment, it has a certain number of shares in the building corporation that owns the building. I'm being very sort of general. And then the buyer and the seller come to agreement on price and terms, but then there's a board of directors that has to approve the transaction. And then you have to disclose all of your financials and get reference letters and this, that, and the other, and be interviewed. And then they can say no.
It's like a tax audit, basically.
I think it's almost worse than a tax audit.
Because it's also a personal audit.
It's also a personal audit. And at the end of the day, you are hopeful that you have identified the requirements of the building and they line up with what you can actually present so that the transaction can be approved. But there's still always a chance of it not being approved.
Sure. And so that is a podcast fail. That's for me to call clients, but I have canceled that time block because we are here at Inman Connect 2019 in Las Vegas. All right, so just to wrap up the New York thing, do you fear ever? I don't think you probably fear much, right? Because you've been New York native. You said it for your whole life. You've been in this industry a long time. But do you fear that one day you would wake up and maybe the New York City market isn't going to come back? Maybe you're going to wake up one day and New York City isn't the best city in our country? Or do you just intuitively know that all of this new development inventory is going to get soaked up and prices are going to reach a new high, whether it's in 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, or whatever?
I think that at the end of the day, there is a great deal of stability. And, maybe it will take longer for things to come back, but there's also this avenue of, and the desirability, quite honestly, of wanting to own a piece of real estate in New York or wanting to live there that makes it an appealing investment. So a lot of my clients are native New Yorkers. They're people who have moved from other parts of the country. They're people who've moved from other parts of the world. They're people who are from other parts of the world who want to own a piece of New York real estate because maybe their kid is going to go to school there, or it just feels like a secure place for them to buy and invest. And I don't think that's going to change. I think some of the dynamics that they're the economic dynamics, but they're also the social dynamics of what's going on in the city. And that's also something that can have an impact as well.
And I agree with you. So let's dive into some of the stuff that you do outside of sales. And we're going to link up, if you're listening to this on the podcast, go over to YouTube, because that's where we always link these articles that we're talking about in the description. So we'll link this up. There's an article on Inman Bernice Ross just wrote, I think literally like last week, was it? Or the beginning
Literally
of this week?
just last week. I think it just went live. When it went live, I was on the plane coming to Inman Connect.
Okay. Yeah.
And
It was on the front page of Inman like 2 days ago.
Yeah, apparently it went out in the newsletter, and the headline, there are people that I think everybody should obviously read Inman. It's a great source of news, but there are people who don't always pay attention, and the headline was such that it grabbed people's attention. Then they looked. So I got emails and text messages and Instagram messages, and I'm literally on the plane. Thank God for Wi-Fi, which I had because I'm trying to actually keep some things going back home transaction-wise. So
the headline, I don't recall the headline, but it was basically, and it was you and somebody I don't know.
Kenya Burrell from Houston Association of Realtors, who you should know.
I should know her. I mean, the write-up was quite impressive.
I think she gets here today. She wasn't here yesterday, but
maybe you can introduce us.
Yes, I will definitely introduce you.
So tell me about, Kenya, great write-up. You can read about the stuff that she's working on. Super into the board. What I do want to comment on Kenya, I don't know her, anything like that. I already love her because she stood up for not only what her local board believed in, when they went out and they polled everybody on the NAR dues, but overwhelmingly the NAR members. And for her to speak out about, it was surprising at NAR that there wasn't the level of support within, those NAR regulars that she would have expected or anticipated.
Right.
I thought that was really an important conversation that we need to be having. I know you're not a part of NAR, but for those of us that are NAR members, that's an important conversation because too many people do not want to ruffle the feathers like maybe Kenya did, intentionally or not, because they have a motive to get somewhere within NAR in the future. And that was very impressive to me.
But I think what's interesting about that, and I think particularly in the environment that we are in these days, there is a lot of this idea of how am I being perceived versus sometimes you have to do what you feel is the right thing, whether you feel it or whomever you're representing, because it's the right thing to do.
And the numbers backed her up of it is overwhelmingly the right thing to do. And for that to get voted, I mean, that's a whole week.
That's a whole week. We'll be talking about this all week. And, now that, you have my cell phone number, not my personal one, because it's not the 212 number.
Oh, I didn't get the personal one. That's right.
It's people like to call it the bat phone. Someone got a FaceTime from me yesterday on it and didn't answer. And when we were at dinner, we were joking about it. And everybody was like, wait. I said, that's like my personal number. And like, you have that? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I didn't answer because I didn't know who it was.
That's true. I do that a lot. I don't answer. I don't know who it is. All right, but I want to get into some of the stuff that you're doing voluntarily. And you are a president-elect. Tell me the organization you're a president-elect for, what that means going into 2020 for you.
Yeah, so I am a member of the International Real Estate Federation.
And I'm embarrassed to say, until I read this article, I didn't have any awareness of this federation.
So it's almost like an inside joke that we often say. People say that all the time, and we say it's the organization that you didn't know existed, and then once you hear about it, you're like, why didn't I know about it, and why am I not a part of it? So, which is kind of the reaction I had when I first was told about it. It is a multidisciplinary international organization for everything that touches real estate. So it's not just residential brokers, it's commercial, it's developers, it's architects, it's wealth managers. And we are in approximately 60 plus countries. There are national and multinational chapters. I think there are like 49 national and multinational chapters. And
Not to cut you off.
yes.
So would you call it the Pepsi to Coca-Cola, the Pepsi to NAR?
It's, well, not even necessarily, because like as an example, NAR is one of our principal members.
Okay.
So organizations that are our principal
NAR
members
is a
include
member.
Yeah.
Okay.
NAR is a principal member of the International Real Estate Federation, also CCIM,
Okay.
BOMA, the Institute for Real Estate Management, the National Appraisal Institute, ARIA. All of
Wow.
these organizations, and those are just organizations that are U.S. based, that are principal members.
This is
This is big.
literally bigger.
It's literally bigger than that, and it's not just limited to people who help people buy, sell real
Residential
estate.
real estate.
Residential real estate. So the opportunity for the business opportunities that come about because of this organization are really extraordinary. One of our current world president is from Lebanon. He's the youngest world president in the history of the organization. I think he just turned 40. And he is the president of a real estate syndicate in Lebanon. He's also a developer and a broker. One of our other past world presidents was very involved in bringing NAR to India. Wow. So it's these levels of connections that you wouldn't necessarily get in any other organization. And on top of, if all of that were not enough, we have NGO status with the UN Economic and Social Council, advising on global housing policy. And last week in New York, the U.S. chapter was one of the organizations that hosted and put together an urban thinkers campus that focused on 4 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals as it pertains to affordable housing.
Now I feel like I'm just sitting with a straight up gangster here in Nikki. Like, holy smokes, that just you just totally blew my mind right there. So are you going to be the president of the whole thing?
The U.S. chapter.
US
the U.S.
chapter.
chapter. I'm currently president-elect of the U.S. chapter. I was a past president of my local area council, which was all of the Northeast, including Connecticut.
All right.
Ironically enough, we go from New York all the way to Maine. And then I was elected to the board in 2016. I was reelected last year. And just this last, earlier this year, I was elected president-elect. So this year I'm president-elect, and then next year I become president. And if that were not enough, when I was in Moscow, which you probably saw the photos on social
Yes.
for our World Congress, I was appointed president of the conferences committee for this year.
All right. So how's this going to impact your time? What are your roles and responsibilities going to be on a weekly, day-to-day basis, whatever?
On a
however that
day-to-day
looks?
basis, so we have a board of directors, we have an executive committee, we have a strategic planning committee, and then we have various committees at the national level that work on different initiatives, whether it's events or marketing and public relations or academic outreach. We have many academic members, including Columbia and Harvard and institutions like that. So from that perspective, and over the last 2 years, as you saw in the article, I've been very involved with the executive committee and helping in sort of reorganization and streamlining. So that continues, but in this role as president-elect, in conjunction with the current president, and she and we like to joke that we're basically one person. So you don't need to find both of us, just find one of us, and whatever I would say, she would say. We've basically become... At this point, we say the same thing at the same time.
You guys are in tune.
We're so in tuned, and we're both brokers in New York City. I live uptown; she lives downtown. I start to joke that we should just pick an apartment in the middle and live together. We'd be much more efficient with our time. So that definitely continues, but it's also sort of setting sort of the strategic plan over the next couple of years and sort of guiding the mission and bringing the organization into more of the forefront of the conversation, because I think what happens is that there are a lot of people who are looking for ways to grow their business, whether it's globally or they want to have more of an impact on the world. And this is an organization that can help you to do both of those things
if
ultimately.
you want to, like, I'll just be straight up. I want to have a major impact on this industry.
Right.
Right? So is this an organization that I should be not only, I'm starting to learn about it through you, obviously, but I should be looking at joining? And why would somebody join this organization?
When I originally joined, I was at a different firm, and I was looking for a more efficient way of connecting with other real estate professionals in other countries, because I saw...
Because you're in New York,
I'm
that
in
makes
New York,
so much sense.
I'm in New York, and because of my previous background and my clients, they would be in New York, and then they'd be relocated to Tokyo, and they would want help, and they would ask me, and I would have to try, search and cobble the internet for things. And that's kind of how I came upon the organization. And I said, well, this is great. Now I can form, these relationships to try and grow that avenue of my business. And that's ultimately why a lot of people do join the organization, because they want to grow that avenue of their business, or they want to sort of start or grow that avenue of the business. The affiliation with the United Nations was always something to me that seemed very far away and distant, that not everybody was involved in directly. But over the last couple of years, what's been interesting is learning more about that, and also bringing that conversation to different people. I'll give you a perfect example. In being involved in the planning of this Urban Thinkers Campus, I've been able to talk more to the people at UN Habitat. I've been attending meetings of the Civil Society Working Group in New York and learning more about different areas of real estate that I probably didn't think about. But last week...
Within your own city.
Within my own city. And last week, we had one of our speakers. I was floored. I sat down and I took notes, and I thought to myself, wow, I never understood what supportive housing was and what an impact that could make in someone who was maybe formerly homeless not being homeless anymore. And separate from, that's a really amazing thing, and I'm glad to know there is a term for it. But I thought to myself, I have clients who are investors, and maybe they are also interested in making a different kind of impact. And is this something that would be interesting to them? So one of the things that I want to do when I go back is take a tour of one of these sort of homes, these facilities, and find out more, because maybe that's an opportunity for my clients that I can bring to them.
I mean, how many times do you get the question from an investor, what else can we do differently? Nikki, what other ideas
What
do you have?
What other ideas do you have? But also, I think that there is a greater awareness of, you don't necessarily want to say the sort of fundamental inequalities of the world, but quite frankly, the two of us, we're sitting, thousands of miles away from home. We have the luxury of being able to come to this conference, be here. We have the luxury of doing these things, and there are people in our own backyards who don't have homes. So
we live closer to each other than we do to here, so we could have done this podcast.
We totally could have done this podcast anywhere.
We're so spoiled. We're sitting in a suite and
we're sitting in a suite and doing this podcast. But even still, if we had been doing it, in my office or in your office or somewhere in between, because I'm not even sure. Can I get to the Metro? Use the Metro North to get to you?
Yes, you can. You gotta switch over in New Haven, because I'm only like 2 towns away from New Haven.
Right.
So you would just switch over to the shoreline once you get to New Haven.
Yeah.
You walk across the...
Totally, this is something that we could very easily do anywhere along that corridor. But you think about, and there's this perception of our industry that it's driven by greed. And I think that fundamentally, many of us want to do good things. We want to run businesses, and we want to be profitable.
Of course, you have to.
But we want to have a greater impact on our world. And what if we find ways to be more philanthropic and make a greater impact on our environment?
Instead of waiting till you've made all the money, do it along the journey.
Along the journey. And I think that there are conversations, and what I've learned, especially in the last couple of months, as I've been in the middle of all of this UN stuff with putting together the Urban Thinkers Campus, is that there are conversations, there are things that we are probably already doing that align with these goals and these possibilities, but we don't know. It's like we don't know what we don't know. We talk about that with our clients, that we have this responsibility to educate them, but we also have a responsibility to educate ourselves about what the possibilities are just in life.
You
let
are
alone
speaking
business.
my language right now. Like, absolutely. You have to get better every day. It's a compounding effect. And if you're not investing in yourself, if you're, I mean, I do this thing, 5 a.m. call, and I say on every single call when I get the chance to moderate, you've got to be selfish in your morning routine so that you can be selfless with the rest of your day.
So it's
and there's no
funny.
chance of being selfless unless you
It's
have some
funny
selfishness.
because I have periodically, when the call started, the West Coast version of it, and I'm going, by 8 a.m., I'm on to like 16 other things.
Yes, yeah.
But then also by 5 a.m., a lot of what has changed in my personal schedule is that my health club opens at 5:30. So usually I'm trying to aim to get there by 5:30. And one of the things that I do in the morning.
Are you Peloton or something? Or
No. So
something else?
I do own a Peloton. I bought a Peloton last year.
That's the big crazy.
I bought a
here.
Peloton last year, and I will tell you, it is one of the best things that I have
I've
purchased.
been to the studio in the city.
Yeah,
That's a lot of fun.
I have not been to the studio in the city because I have a bike at home.
And so, yeah.
And I can get to Soul Cycle. I was having this conversation. I went to Soul Cycle this morning, 7 a.m. here in Vegas. I can get to Soul Cycle and my health club faster than I can get to Peloton. And I'm like, why would I do that? I've got to go, I've got to shower, I've got to carry clothes. But in the morning, I like to meditate first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't like to look at my phone or deal with electronics necessarily if I can avoid it. And part of what happens when you're involved with business, because all of our clients, they're roaming all over the place, all over the world.
Certainly if you're in New York City.
I mean, you're in New York City.
Yeah.
So there's issue number one. Issue number two, being involved with this international organization, the committee that I am currently effectively running at the international level.
You're talking 60 different time, but there's probably not even 60 different time zones, but
here's
lots
an
of time
example.
zones.
At one point last year, we had someone in Andorra, and we had 3 other people on the committee in Asia, not even in the same time zone in Asia, and then me in New York. So I always got the short end of the stick. Now I'm the one theoretically in charge. I still have those same 3 people, and then I have someone in Mexico. So, and the world president, he's from Lebanon, but he's always traveling somewhere else. So my mornings can be really, really out of whack. So whenever possible, I try to not engage with my phone or email until after I get back from the gym, which is why I don't do the 5 a.m. call, because
Listen, I think you've got enough on your plate.
No, but
right?
it's the fascinating thing if you can kind of protect that time and set whatever your routine is. It's really, really magical. The days that I can't do it because I've got a conference call at 2 a.m., I am so miserable the rest of the day because it's thrown me off.
You didn't have your time.
I didn't have my time
to fill your tank and then go impact other people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's so important. So I know we don't have enough time on this podcast, but I'm really thankful you kind of brought me up to speed on a little bit of this. I want to dig in more. I am going to spend the time digging in more, but let's shift gears here.
Sure.
We are in Vegas, both for the same reason, at Inman Connect here in 2019. Talk to me a little bit about what being an Inman ambassador has meant. It seems like you've been pretty tied into this whole Inman thing for quite some time. So just talk to me about Inman in general for a little bit.
In general, so I don't even remember at this point when my first time coming to an Inman Connect was.
They're better in New York City because I can drive there and you can just get dropped off.
Yeah, I hate Times Square. So two of my favorite Inman Connects in New York were the years that they were at Grand Central.
Oh, see, that was before my Inman days for sure.
Yes, it was 2000, maybe 2012 and 11 and 12 or 12 and 13, maybe. But it was somewhere in that avenue, and they were at Grand Central, and I was so happy because I'm also an East Sider, so I don't like Times Square, and I don't like having to take a lot of trains, so I could get on one train, and I was there. I was so happy. But now there's the 2nd Avenue subway, and I can get to Times Square in a nanosecond. And when I went to Connect, I was trying to find sort of new energy and new ideas. And I had been sort of observing and reading online about things that people were doing in other markets. And I thought it would be an interesting sort of experiment to go and engage. And I have made amazing friends. I am actually at the company that I'm at now because of someone that I met at an Inman Connect who ended up being the introduction to the conversation. And when the ambassador program started was back when Katie Lance was at Inman.
Shout out to Katie Lance, by the way. If you're not following Katie and you want to up your social game, check
You need
check
to follow
Katie
Katie.
Absolutely.
You know, check out her book, Get Social Smart,
Yes.
all that fun stuff. And they even have, did you see the Inman Books little area downstairs?
I didn't see that
so
yet,
they actually
no.
have like books that are available with some of the people that are
Katie's
speaking.
is one of them?
Katie's is one of them, and Joe Rand and all these other
Yeah.
great people. And I don't say that because I like them. I say that because I think they're great people and they're really smart. 'Cause if
Katie's one of the good people in this industry.
She's one of the good people in this industry. And this industry actually has a lot more good people than bad.
100%.
So that's how I got plugged into it. And I think the first time they did the ambassadors was not at the New York event. But then when they did it in New York, I've been an ambassador almost ever since.
So it's been about the connection
It's
with
been
people.
it's been about the connection with people. It's been the opportunity. I've been able to speak. I've been able to write. I don't write as much as I should because I have too many other things going on. But I did speak to them about maybe I should write a book someday. And I've wanted to do that for a really long time.
Listen,
so
I think
bucket list.
I think after 2020, you're going to have enough material for a book just based on 2020 with your
so
work
my
in the organization.
my year is spring 2020 to spring 2021, and then when you're immediate past president, you still remain very engaged and involved. So basically, after I think it's 2022 or 2023. I actually thought about this the other day. When does that point in time come where I am less engaged because I'm no longer an immediate past president or I'm not chairing a committee that comes with being a past president? So it's a couple of years out, but I am anxiously looking forward to it.
You haven't even done it. She's looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to the downtime. But I think that one of the amazing things about Inman is the potential for connections, because I'm not a member of NAR. Until Chicago, actually, was the very first time I went to an NAR conference. Mm-hmm. And I was only there for a nanosecond. So there aren't a lot of these opportunities that I would necessarily get to interact with so many layers of the industry, to have the people who are the marketers, to have the agents who are boots on the ground, and the technology. And now there's the prop tech segment.
That's what's cool about this one.
That's what's cool about this one. I'm super stoked about that. There's a great, and I actually have to tell you about this. MIPIM. Have you been to MIPIM in Cannes, France? It's one of the biggest property expos in the world.
I've learned more in the last 20 minutes than at any point this year.
And as one of the best benefits of the FIABCI membership is that your MIPIM registration is 50% off.
Okay.
But anyway, MIPIM has also started doing a prop tech event that's in New York that you can come and take the train down to.
I feel like I just signed up for 2 things without even taking credit card out yet.
Trust me. You'll, now I'll be texting you and say, hey, here you go. But that's fascinating. But the people really make the conference, and the opportunity for me to interact with so many different layers is kind of priceless. And over the course of time, you get to go deeper in these relationships. People joke, they're like, oh, I can't believe you go to Soul Cycle at 7 a.m. while you're at a conference. We were having an amazing, intense discussion about the industry, sitting in an Uber, heading back to the hotel. It was some people from CAR, Oh, I forgot her. I remember her name, Madeline. She's from Colorado, and I can't remember the company she's with now. But she was previously at Zillow and Trulia. But these relationships that you can build with people that then continue beyond the conference. People will pop into New York because not a lot of people come and always visit New York because it's expensive. And I get that.
But everybody ends up in New York.
At some point. But the best thing is
not everybody ends up in Connecticut, but they always end up in New York.
But you can tell them it's a quick train ride up.
It is.
They will say, hey, I'm coming to town. Do you have time for a drink? Do you have time for dinner? And then being able to continue those conversations can make an impact on your business beyond the conversations and the content. So that's really, take that opportunity, whether it's Inman, or I know there are different coaching companies, and I used to go to some of those things too, and just finding that avenue can be really, really remarkable and have impact, and just like great friends.
I agree.
Like amazing people. When my mother passed away last year, just like the people that were so in tune, or saying, how are you doing? What can I do? Or when she was sick, like those real, genuine friendships, that's a really, really special thing. So however you can build those, just do it.
I don't know about you, but when I leave these types of events where you have those special connections and you spend a 48-hour burst of time with these people, like I leave and I come home like jumping around. My wife's like, all right, go sit down for a little bit.
Sit down for a little bit.
Because I have so much energy and I want to like do so much because of that impact that other people have made on me in the last 48, 72 hours.
Yeah, or in the case of 5 days is a really long time to be in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and especially here in Las Vegas.
I don't think I've ever been to Vegas for more than 48
Yeah, I've
hours
never done more than 4 hours. Yeah,
Maybe
or 4 days.
2.5 days.
Yeah.
Including travel time. So this is, I'm just over 24 hours in, and I'm still in a good mood. So this is remarkable.
You haven't lost all that sleep yet.
No, not yet. Although my dad is
tonight.
with me, and we had to go out for another 2 hours yesterday to kind of wander and gamble.
Well, there's a bash tonight. Are you staying up?
Is that Thursday?
IDX bash? No, the Innovator Bash is Thursday.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. There's that too. Oh, God.
Jeez. Oh, I just totally ruined the night.
No, I totally remember that there's too many things.
There's a lot
too
of
many
stuff.
things, but there's also, I'm not afraid to sort of draw a line in the sand and say, okay, you know what, that's it. I'm
Can't do
done.
everything.
I need to sleep. I also have Soul Cycle tomorrow at 7 a.m. and I'm not losing my, $40.
I'm going to the gym here in the Aria again at 5 a.m. It was gorgeous, by the way, Aria. Great job on the fitness
Do they have
center.
Pelotons here?
They had a lot of bikes. I did not see a Peloton, no.
Okay. They don't. I'm next door at the Waldorf, and they don't have them there either. But Soul Cycle is, and I would never have come to the Soul Cycle because I don't like Vegas, so I don't necessarily choose to come here. I was so glad that I went and checked out the new studio. It was fun.
So Nikki, this has been so much fun. You've got almost 20 years experience in the industry, basically, right? Before we wrap this thing up, I want your quick take on this disruption in real estate talk, whether, you bucket Zillow into there, you bucket today's news, Amazon partnering with Realogy to generate leads for Realogy brand agents.
The iBuyers, everything.
All this kind of stuff. Lump it all together, disruptors. What's your hot take on that?
My hot take on it remains that if you know your value and the value that you bring to your clients in the course of the transaction and you have the expertise, I don't think you have anything to be afraid of.
Boom. No fear from Nikki. Nikki, where are people going to follow? Because we're going to link them up on YouTube. Again, if you're listening to this, if you're on Facebook, whatever, go over to YouTube and check out the description because we're going to link up the article that Bernice wrote. We're also going to link up where people can find you. I know you're so busy that you might not want to be found, but people want to follow you. They want to see what you're retweeting, what you're talking about.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Ironically, when I was trying to find you, the people I couldn't necessarily get away from were my website people because they helped me redesign my website, and then I've been just between work and personal stuff with my mother, I haven't launched it. And so they were it's time oh, you know what, now we need to revisit and make sure we don't have to tweak anything. But if you Google me, I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, you're all over the industry, Nikki. This has been an absolute
This has been
pleasure.
fun. What a really great way to actually meet face to face.
I agree.
In person.
No, because listen, we would have had this same exact conversation whether it was getting a coffee at Starbucks or whatever.
Yeah.
We just now have the benefit of sharing this probably on Inman with a whole bunch of people, whether they're new agents or been in the industry for a long time, that can take something from this. There's going to be a whole bunch of people that are like, I've never even heard of this organization. She's going to be the president. It's bigger than NAR. Like, people's minds are going to be blown.
From a membership perspective, but it's like, I think what happens is that we get so stuck in our boxes. We get stuck in our boxes, and we don't look outside of the box for ideas, for inspiration. I mean, Inman is a great source, but there are so many other things. Like, I love reading Harvard. You probably know this about me. I love the Harvard Business Review. It's one of my favorite things on the planet to read. Or like the TED app on my phone.
Yeah.
That is like the best thing to have on your phone. You're walking on the treadmill, just like listen to a TED Talk.
Yeah. Audiobook, TED Talk, all that
TED
stuff.
Talk, all of these things. We have these things in the palms of our hands. We're so fortunate from that perspective.
Nikki, this has been a pleasure. When you do write that book, I'm going to have you back on the podcast. It'll be a much bigger audience by then too. So when you're promoting that book,
when I'm promoting the book,
we'll do it right here on the podcast, Nikki.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
It's so much fun.
Can't wait to see your journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. I really appreciate all your engagement, all your comments, and if you like this content, if you want to see more, please, I've got 2 videos linked up here, or hit the subscribe button so that you never miss a video again.